I am Ryan McKnight.
I'm Cara Santamaria.
I am Christopher Smith.
Hi, I'm Andrew Torres.
This is Naked Mormonism,
the serial Mormon history podcast. It has been a crazy month. You may be thinking this sounds terrible. Why? Why is this horrible? Well, that's because I'm still not back home yet from Europe, and I'm recording this on my phone microphone. I'll talk about that in a second. But back from where, you may ask? If you've been listening the last few weeks or following me on social media, you'll know that my partner and I have been spending an entire month in Europe. 2 weeks in Germany, a week in England for the world-renowned QED conference, and a week in Ireland for a conference that Annie was invited to attend. It's been amazing so far. This is my first time in Europe, and we've really made the absolute best of it. If you're a subscriber on patreon.com/nakedmormonism, you have a couple of travel logs that I recorded while out and about, so I won't belabor you all here with the details. Just go sign up and listen there if you're interested. Suffice it to say, for a lover of history like yours truly, it has been amazing to see so many places with histories that are much deeper and older than documented European American history. We saw churches built in the 1300s, libraries with books hundreds of years older than the American Constitution. We toured a bunch of museums and all types of other tours that we just could never get back home in Seattle. So with all that said, the week in Manchester, England particularly stood out to me, and that's what I'm going to talk about for a little bit today. Now, I'm biased in what I'm going to say about QED. I was halfway through a month-long endorphin euphoria attending a skeptics conference in a foreign land. So what I'm going to say about QED is a bit partial, but you don't have to just take my word for it. I was able to steal away a few attendees for some quick interviews about QED and skepticism. They were all recorded on my phone microphone, so some of them have a bunch of background noise, and, I just decided to record this little intro and my thoughts afterwards on the same mic, just for consistency. It's going to drive Brian crazy, but yeah, whatever, he'll get over it. So without any further ado, here are just a few interviews that I pulled while I was at QED in Manchester, UK, and I'm going to give a few thoughts afterwards. So I'm lucky enough to be joined by Noah and Lucinda Lugeons of Puzzle and a Thunderstorm. Thank you both. What did we just experience for the past 3 days?
Basically everything you could possibly want out of a skeptical conference. So here's how good it is. I got to be up in like 5.5 hours, and then I'm going to be on a train for 3 hours, then I'm going to be on a plane for 6 hours, and then I'm going to be at Eli's asbestos-filled house for 24 hours, and then I'm going to be on a plane 4 hours again. And still, I'm just like, when Bryce says, hey, you want to take a minute to talk up QED? I was like, yes, I do. Because I want to make sure that when this comes around again in 2020, everybody is fully aware that this is where they should be.
Absolutely. And Lucinda, what is this?
It's, I've always found it to be family. Anytime I come to these, and QED has been the best so far, I think, at finding that like-minded, just comfortable feeling of family that you get with the community of skeptical and like-minded people.
Totally.
I love it.
We leave religion, and there's that support group, that community. When you leave, that all goes kind of away with it. Like we got to find something to replace it. We got to find people where we can share that camaraderie. And I don't know, it just seems like QED is a great space that they've cultivated that.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the things, if you talk to the organizers of QED, one of the things that they wanted from the very beginning, the founding principles of this place are things like the fact that there's an open bar, or not open bar, but there's a bar that's open in the hotel, in the event venue, throughout the entire venue, right? So in between, if there's not a panel that you want to see or a workshop that you want to see or whatever, you pop into the bar and all the speakers are there. Everyone's hanging out. It's a big community. I had a chance to meet, I would say probably 25-30% of the people who came to this conference. And I can't imagine that much more than that percentage know who the hell I am. Right? So, basically, I've got to feel like everybody who wanted a chance to meet and hang out with the speakers got a chance to meet all of these people that, look, podcasting is intimate. Podcasting is a relationship that we have together. The thing is that up until we meet you at a conference, we're just monopolizing the conversation, right? We're never letting you have a chance to talk. And being able to give that back and turn that over to the listeners is spectacular. And of course, I experience it from both ends because I got to meet Steve No fucking Vella, the guy who inspired me to get into this movement.
You admire as well, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I get to experience both ends of it. Obviously, not everybody gets that, but if you come to these things, you'll find not just like-minded people in terms of skepticism or atheism, but in terms of like what makes a person a good person. You'll find people who are willing to change their minds and have honest arguments, not the bullshit that you get on Facebook and Twitter, but have honest discussions and stuff where they're willing to change their mind and listen to evidence and everything. And that's something you just can't get all day long anywhere else.
Yeah.
And it gives us an opportunity to feel like we get to know them a little bit in a way that they already feel like they know us.
Right.
So.
And I'm struck with the diversity too here that they have of so many different people of different educations, different expertise, and it's a melding of all of those. It's a huge melding pot of incredibly intelligent people, and everybody who you stop and talk to almost exclusively is going to be an expert on something,
right?
And they're going to want to talk about it. A great place to learn.
You're going to find somebody that you're going to stand there and have an interesting and even deep conversation with, at some point at one of these,
And not a person, but many people. And if you're a person like myself, or like I know Bryce is, who has sort of eclectic interests, I find any interest or any subject interesting if you're talking to an interesting person who knows something about it. Exactly. And my goal is to learn as much as I possibly can. And at conferences like this, not only do you get these great talks, these great workshops, these really good, really well thought out panels filled with, actual experts that do these things for a living, but also just the attendees, are generally, like you said, varying levels of education, going up to multiple PhDs, and all. And look, the guy I was just chatting with outside, he's not a super educated guy, but every time he opened his mouth, he was teaching me interesting history. So just meet some fascinating people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, everything from comedians to scientists to brain specialists. There's everybody is here. I mean, it's amazing.
So QED 2020, come everybody.
Yeah, definitely.
If you can get tickets.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah, get them early.
Thank you both so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay, I am here joined at QED by the illustrious Bob Novella of the Skeptic's Guide universe. How you doing, Bob?
Great, Bryce. Great to be here.
Thank you so much for taking just a couple minutes with me.
My pleasure.
I wanted to ask you a couple of things. You guys at SGU are probably the most well-known, one of the longest, probably the longest running skeptical podcast. And you have a backlog of 680 episodes roughly right now?
Approaching 700 very soon.
Very
months.
soon?
Yes.
How did this all come about? Tell me a little bit about the New England Skeptical Society, the genesis of the SGU. Just give us a rundown for somebody who's never heard of it.
Way back in 1996, if you remember the ancient time back then, we were reading a CSI magazine, and in the back it had skeptical organizations by state. And we looked at Connecticut. Our friend Perry DeAndres noticed that there's no Connecticut Skeptical Society. We were all very skeptical, science-minded at that time, and he said that we should start one. So we started the New England Skeptical Society, or what it was at first was the Connecticut Skeptical Society. Then we kind of expanded a little bit to the New England Skeptical Society, and then we put out quarterly newsletters, which we wrote articles for, and they were kind of dispersed through our members. We had like 300 or 400 members, which we thought was a lot of people at the time. And then, so we did that for years, and then eventually podcasting was kind of born in the early 2000s. We heard about it and decided to start a show, and so we came up with the idea and the format of the show for our podcast, and it's pretty much, after all this time, back in 2005, it's pretty much very similar format. The format we hit upon, or Steve kind of came up with the skeleton of it, worked very well, and we're still doing pretty much the same thing today, and it's been very, very popular. We're very happy with our success. And now, of course, we got our book. We finally wrote a book, The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe.
Which I was very disappointed to find out is completely sold out at the moment. But hopefully there will be a solution and I can get signatures from all the rogues.
And
awesome.
Right, and anyone listening, of course, could just go to bookstores or just Amazon and get a book, an audio version of it, or a hard copy, soft copy, whatever they want. And we're really excited. So we're just going around. We're at QED having a wonderful time, but also selling the book and signing books for people. And it's been great.
So I want to ask you specifically, Bob, because when I talked to you a little bit earlier, I said one thing that I appreciate about you and your presence on SGU is that you dance really close to the humor side that might get almost offensive, but I mean, like you tend to be slightly the loosest of the brothers of cannons on the show. At least that's how it comes across, anyway. So I want to ask you. This is a question, I don't know if anybody's asked you this before, but if you were to do a solo show based on what your interests are, based on your interest in nanoscience and in anything else in astrophysics, what would your podcast, what would the Bob Novella podcast be about? A solo run?
Well, I mean, if you notice on the podcast, I don't hardly ever talk about critical thinking or skepticism, because that's as much as I love it and know it. My ballywick, my forte, I think, is hard science, physics, astronomy, material science. So if I had to, go out on my own, I probably would I would continue that, talk about physics and astronomy and things like that. But I think I would probably add things to it, like thinking about extrapolating these technologies and sciences into the future and say, what's life going to be like in 50 years?
This blob of nanotech.
right. And I mean, I hint upon it. I hint at it at the show. But if I had my own show, I would go into more detail of what we could expect in the next generation or two in terms of science, not only science but technology that we could derive from that science. So that's probably what I would focus on. That's one of the things I love. But I could also focus on Halloween and cosplay.
All the Novella brothers.
I'm a big crazy Halloween guy. I ran my own haunted house. I decorate like crazy every year, so I would probably bring that into play as well. As long as I'm having my own, podcast, I could talk about that. So it'll probably be a mishmash of my passions: science, science fiction, Halloween, cosplay, whatever I love. Why not? Star Trek, of course. I don't think I'd ever get as big of an audience as we have at SGU, because this is such a synergistic team effort.
Oh yeah.
But
there's so much diversity in the subjects that you cover with all of your interests, and that's why I think it appeals to everybody so much.
Right.
Power.
After 13 years, I think I would have shot my wad on my own podcast. Like, what else am I going to talk about? I covered it all. But I think I'll stick with SGU and do the other stuff on my own time.
Fantastic, and maybe one of the brothers will able to, hopefully with Patreon dollars, somebody will be able to go full time for working. For SGU
we want to get Jay. We want to get Jay working full time, and eventually Steve and I and Evan, and that's probably be. Kara probably will always have her own little side stuff, of course. She's so good at it. But we also do. Steve, Jay, and I branched off a bit into Alpha Quadrant 6.
That's right.
Which is our video podcast dealing with all things science fiction. We reviewed Star Trek Discovery, but we also talk about the top 10 robots in science fiction, the best ships in science fiction, and we review movies and TV shows, everything you could think of with science fiction, and we love that. We love doing that, and you're going to see more of it. So look us up on Facebook, Alpha Quadrant 6.
Awesome. Well, if you're able to accomplish everything that the SGU does already, I can't imagine what it would be like if some of you were able to go full time. It'd be just absolutely incredible. So for all that, for coming here, for doing the live show, the Skeptic Extravaganza, for everything that the SGU does, thank you so much, Bob.
You're welcome, Bryce. Great to be here.
Once again at QED here, we just finished a panel that was hosted by Andy Wilson, and I'm joined by Greg Ratti. And Ratti, is that?
Ratti.
Mm-hmm. And then Cara Santa Maria. We just did the first ever QED Mormon panel.
Neat.
Any thoughts?
I absolutely loved it. It was a great atmosphere, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was a really warm room, and I'm happy to say I did a panel yesterday as well in that same room, and it was a packed room yesterday as well, but this time it was standing room only towards the back, and Andy told us they had to turn 40 people away. It's amazing.
It is amazing, and I was really encouraged by that.
Yeah.
So many people were interested, and the people that are asking questions, they thought it all through, hadn't they? It was nothing. I thought it was great.
Well, and we broached so many seemingly disparate subjects of Mormonism, Mormon culture, little tiny snippets of Mormon history, and it was all introduced by Andy. His brother is Mormon, and his brother's Mormon letter exchange from his mission to his mother, which I think kind of put a somber feel on the entire panel
At the beginning.
At the very beginning.
Yeah, but I think we came back from it.
Yeah, that's
It was very powerful, I thought.
It was
I thought it was
powerful.
very pertinent that he did that, actually.
And I think what's interesting too is, by and large, most of the people attending here have probably never met a Mormon. A largely, European audience. Mormonism doesn't have the foothold here that it used to, and it was probably a lot of new information to a lot of people. Did you strike
I
this-
think so. Oh, definitely, yeah. I think that people were just so fascinated, really. I don't think they had seen that side of it, had they? I think they just, yeah.
No, I think often the relationship with Mormonism is quite an emotional one, and it's quite a fantastical one.
Right.
And so to have a very level conversation that was a little bit emotionally removed. I think Andy obviously has an emotional relationship with it because of his brother, but we were all in it, and then we left, and we've healed. And so I think that comes through in the conversation.
And I just love that it was all done with such humour as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That was the thing, I think,
Well,
that really did it for me. It was important, but it was humorous, and I think that was a big one.
And you can't have Andy on a panel and it not be funny.
Right. And that's just humor follows him around.
He did a really great job, I have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
and,
great job.
and I think it makes the subjects a bit more impactful if you can weave humor into it and make it so it's not just a happy heart sell the whole time.
Absolutely.
And I think that really probably stuck with a lot of people.
Yes, definitely.
I think it was an important panel. So,
Me too.
Agree.
well, I was really glad to share it with the three of you. With Andy isn't actually sitting here with us right now.
The two of you plus
with
Andy.
The two of you plus a memory of Andy that used to be sitting here.
Yeah.
Everybody listening, come to QED 2020.
Oh my gosh,
this
so
is the best
good.
conference ever.
Yeah.
It's so good. Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, I am joined here by Lydia Finch at QED. Lydia, hello.
Hello.
Stick pins on Twitter.
That's the one.
I've had you on the podcast before. You are an ex-JW, ex-witness,
Yes.
ex-JW. I want to ask you, what is it that you get out of QED? And is this your first QED?
No, this is my fourth QED.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. My first time here, I came totally alone.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody. I think it's community mostly, and when you talk to people here, you'll find out that's what they keep returning for. I guess like-minded people and learning something along the way. But yeah, I'd say community and people.
I was struck by something. One of the panels was talking about podcasting, whether it's activism or entertainment, and one of the panelists said that it's the podcast they do. It's Tom from Cognitive Dissonance saying that sometimes like echo chambers are okay, and the choir needs preaching to. That's why it's called preaching to the choir. And like I feel like we're all part of this same skeptic choir, and like this is where we come to recharge our batteries and actually speak to people that we only know from online presences. Is that how it
This
strikes
is
you?
our church. Is that what you're saying?
Church is a
yes,
tough
but
word.
I think but I think it's required. I mean, because online communities are great, but real proper friendships and connections and relationships are built face to face.
Right.
And I think that's what you get from a conference that you don't get from interacting online. And echo chambers are seen as bad, I think. And I think as long as you're doing both things, I think it has its place.
But in some respects, echo chambers can be synonymous with safe spaces.
Yeah, maybe. But I just think that there's a place for both things. And I think you have to consciously go across communities and make sure that you're not just in your echo chamber. But I think sometimes it's fine. Like at a conference or something, I think it's fine.
I spend a lot of time, like I follow a lot of a lot of TBMs, as we call them, true believing Mormons,
Really?
on Twitter and Facebook, and I'll occasionally get in little fights with them back and forth, and then
Yeah.
of course, just what I do, I spend a lot of time working in the realm of Mormonism, and I like what I've gotten out of QED. We're here at the last day. What I've gotten out of it is a set of tools that I can use to be more effective
Yeah.
in communicating, and a way to recharge batteries after expending all of that energy year round to constantly advocate for better information.
Yeah.
Do you get the same kind of like recharging batteries effect out of this?
Yeah, I do. And I think being in the skeptical community has helped me communicate in a better way with people, and also be more compassionate towards people as well.
What do you mean?
There's a lot of focus at QED about being respectful, understanding. But these people aren't stupid, and I think there's a lot we can learn in our communities from that. Is not treating people like because they still believe or they're still in that they're obviously stupid.
Right.
And I think a lot of the ways of debating, conversation from the skeptical community can kind of go across to ex-religious communities as well.
And that's what you work in, right? I mean, you and I first came in contact when I spent some time crawling YouTube to see your various interviews that you do, talking about ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and providing therapy and a place for people who are transitioning out of cults, because that's a darker subsect of the religious transition that not everybody who gets out of a religion experiences. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about where those differences come into play.
What do you mean?
When people are transitioning out of religion as opposed to when they transition out of cults.
Yeah. Again, it's difficult because there's a lot of crossover with cults being religious. But when you've got a whole lot of, when you're coming out from a cult, there is, you could be losing family. You could be losing community. You've got your whole worldview has been kind of put on its head, and there's a lot of recovery in that, which is why there's so much support groups. Whereas coming out of, let's call it a more mild religion,
like Church of England or something.
You don't have those ramifications. It's still, I understand, because you hear a lot of atheists saying they have issues when they come out, because it's like their whole personality is kind of gonna change, and they have a big transitioning period that is difficult to adjust to. But when you are leaving a cult, you have that also, but you also have all the personal issues with relationships and family. Sometimes I've been called lots of names online.
Yep.
So there's all of those things you have to take into consideration as well, that you don't get with every transition from religion.
And a lot of that seems to come down to the difference in how a religion versus how a cult is structured, where it comes down to behavior, thought, and emotion control.
Yeah.
As opposed to providing a religious community for people to come and go as they please. When it completely controls your life, it's a lot harder to create a life outside of that. Whereas if it's just a club that you're a part of, you leave, come and go anytime you can please.
I mean, when you're coming out of a cult, you are I was. When you come out, you're starting from scratch.
Right.
I literally knew one person. Wow. When I left, because I wasn't allowed to have friendships or relationships outside of the organisation. So you kind of started from scratch. Everyone I grew up with was not allowed to talk to me. My mum wasn't allowed to talk to me. My sisters weren't allowed to talk to me. So you are essentially sent out into the world with no skills. and no people and no support, and you're going with no support at the worst time in your life.
Right.
And that you have to kind of bear in mind. that's a huge life event for most people.
Well, and I think that plays into the first point you made, that like QED, it's a community of people, of skeptics and like-minded individuals, where the term of echo chamber can be used derisively, but you need that. You need a community.
You do need community, and I think that for me, it has been that, and it kind of hits me sometimes when I'm at a skeptic conference. It's like this on some level, this kind of feels the same way. It's not, obviously they're not making me do things against my will.
The cult of skepticism.
Yeah, but it's like just the feeling of everyone being together and just having I guess it's shared experience together,
Right.
And just camaraderie, I guess.
That's the big point, camaraderie.
Yeah. And then kind of, okay, so I liken it again to a religious event. Like as you were saying, like recharging batteries. It's kind of like you come here and you hear the talks, and you kind of, it can re-energize your interest in the subject, but also it can make you want to go out and talk about it to people.
Right.
Like, and for me, that's kind of, it reminds. Again, I'm not saying it's a religious event, but it can give you the same kind of feeling, because the conferences I went to as Jehovah's Witness, that's kind of was their aim, now you come here, you do these things, and then you take it out to people, and you can convert people to skepticism, but you can go out and talk to people about it. So yeah, recharging and going out into society, spreading the word.
Spreading the good word of skepticism.
Yes.
Right. Well, I don't think that it's analogous in many ways to like religion, because we're not spreading an ideology, we're spreading an aim to be skeptical of ideologies, right? So there's a fundamental difference, but the structure is patterned off of what humans have been doing for longer than we have written history, and that's getting together with like-minded individuals and sharing that camaraderie, becoming a community, and using the collective ideas of that community in order to be a more effective human.
I mean, where my brain is, that the only other community I've ever known has been a religious one.
Right.
So I've never experienced that. That's why in my head I compare the two, because I've never had anything else.
That's fair. And all you need to do to understand the sharp divide between a religious community and a skeptical community is get into a conversation with somebody here about something they're an expert in.
Yep.
And you'll quickly understand that you're not in necessarily a field of like-minded people about everything.
Yeah.
We just share the idea of being skeptical of claims.
Yep.
And you start claiming bullshit, people are kind of quickly call you out here.
Well, this is something that I've been talking about in this last week to people, is that when you grow up in a cult, you never have that normal development as a child of learning how to disagree with people and still be friends with them.
Right.
And that was something the skeptical community, I think, taught me, is that I can disagree with someone in this community, and it doesn't mean because I disagree I can never talk to them again.
They're anti-skeptics.
Yeah. So that's a really important learning curve when you come out of it, to accept that you can continue your friendship with someone, even though you don't see absolutely 100% eye to eye on every single subject. Because when you grow up in a cult, you're surrounded by, everyone thinks exactly the same thing. And if you disagree, there are huge ramifications.
Right.
And I think also, not confrontation like fighting, but even having those conversations, for me at first, was really, really uncomfortable. I had this bad feeling in my stomach because of how I'd kind of grown up.
Obviously, it's a very nuanced subject, which is why I encourage people to look up, just type in your YouTube search bar Lydia Finch, LYDIAFINCH, or on Twitter, stick_pins. Is that right?
I don't recall. Maybe.
Okay, Stick Pins, search it on Twitter, and people can find you and see some of your amazing lectures that you've done and talks on podcasts. And really, it was a pleasure to actually meet you in person at QED here.
You.
And actually put, a face to just a disembodied voice that I've heard in my ears and to a Facebook and Twitter profile. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing a few minutes with us.
Thank you.
I am lucky enough to be joined by the primary organizers of QED. I can't believe this. We have Rick, we have Mike, and we have Andy. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
You're welcome. No problem.
What is QED? What did I just experience for the past 2 days?
We call QED a weekend celebration of science, reason, and critical thinking. It's a big skeptical party where we try to put on some interesting content, some interesting things that are going to challenge the people who come along, but also reaffirm what they're doing and hope they have a fun time.
A mind-bending experiment in sleep deprivation and
That's
social cohesion.
That's what QED is to us, not necessarily to our audience.
I don't know. I think a lot of them. Don't think a lot of them get a lot of sleep. I think they do worse than us, actually.
That's fairly true.
I've spoken to a number of people who here spent today with a mere 2.5 hours of sleep, nursing massive hangovers.
Yes.
But they
Bit of action at the karaoke bar last night, apparently.
That's what I hear.
That's what
but
I
they
hear,
had to
yeah.
get here for the live SGU recording at 9:30.
They did, yeah.
And that's really tough on people who finished drinking at 7:30.
Yeah.
But
They still made it, Bryce.
they still made it because SGU and the QED is just fantastic. And okay, so prior to actual QED, this is 2 days of lectures, of panels, of live podcast recordings. Prior to that was Skeptic Camp. Who wants to talk about Skeptic Camp?
Well, Skeptic Camp is organised by a chap called Chris Higgins.
Hello, Chris.
Hello, Chris. And unfortunately, he was unable to make it to QED this year, but he's the backbone of that. And it's a series of short presentations. It's a short form thing, a bit like the Ignite format, where we had multiple talks, which are 10 minutes in length, plus a little bit of Q&A. And then the next talk. So you're never far away from the next talk. And I think people really like it for that.
Because not everybody knows Ignite format just means that you get like 20 seconds per slide and it advances no matter what. So you can't hang around and we know how long all this.
Yeah, you can't dawdle, you can't linger. It's got you've got to keep moving through your talk, which is one of the ways that we stop people getting up there and using Skeptic Camp as a personal soapbox and just standing there and say, I'm on the stage now and here for 45 minutes. That's going to be really boring for the audience, so we don't want to do that. But we still want to give people a way to be able to present the content that they want to present.
It'd be a good idea to explain why we do Skeptic Camp at all. You mentioned it in your closing comments tonight. But why do we do Skeptic Camp?
Sure. So where Skeptic Camp came from is we work really hard to try and make QED an accessible event for people. One of the ways we try to make it accessible is by keeping the ticket price as low as we possibly can, which we were. It's something we take very seriously. Something we work really hard on. We don't raise the ticket price arbitrarily. It's something we only do when we have to. But for some people, even our relatively low ticket price is too much money for them. It's too much for them to be able to afford. So Skeptic Camp was something that came out of conversations where we thought, if we've got this venue space, we already have it. QED has bought and paid for it. So why don't we donate that space to an additional free event that you do not have to be coming to QED to attend? So whether you're coming to QED or whether you're not, and we get a mixture of both people who are coming to QED and people who don't, you can come to Skeptic Camp and enjoy the content that's presented there, completely free of charge. The other thing that Skeptic Camp does is the content for Skeptic Camp is generated by the audience themselves. So people who are attending Skeptic Camp say, I've got something that I would like to talk about. I've got something cool to say. And those people register with Skeptic Camp to deliver that content. So the audience is responsible for both generating the content and for consuming the content, and we basically just facilitate that by paying for the space and the audio-visual equipment to be able to run the event for them.
Skepticamp's not unique to QED. It just so happens.
Yes, it is. It's not our format. I think it actually derived from a format called Barcamp, which was a computer programming thing that was of a similar format where the audience provides the content. And that was co-opted by the skeptical community to make Skepticamp, and we've kind of taken that Skepticamp name and we've used that.
It's convenient, isn't it? When you've got like 650 skeptics, you're bound to have a couple of dozen who will be prepared to stand on stage and do it.
We've had some really interesting talks this year in Skepticamp.
Every year.
One was about
time travelers. Time travelers too.
Edit. No, there's a chap who came the first year and he did cannibalism.
Okay.
The second year he did vampirism, and this year, what did he do? Oh, bestiality did this year. So it's only 10 minutes, and luckily it had no slides. So I was really happy about that.
Well, it's a thing that allows such a wide breadth of possible topics.
Yeah, but it's free. That's the point.
Exactly.
We're using the facility of QED to create an additional access point for people who can't afford to come to QED, which upsets us. We'd like everybody to come to QED.
Well, if there were more tickets available, but obviously there's. Well, no, and I just need to tell listeners, QED has been running 8 years. Is that
Yes, this is the 8th year.
8th year. Every time I've heard my favorite podcasters talk about QED, they say that it is the best skeptic, atheism, science conference in the world, bar none.
And then you came here and you thought,
they weren't lying. Well, no, really, like I've been to a lot of conferences.
What's your experience of QED then, Bryce?
It's amazing.
Why?
Partly because this is my first time in Europe, but mostly because I attend a lot
Europe
of
for much
conferences.
longer.
We're
not getting political.
Oh, right. Okay.
Not getting political here.
Yeah, we're still beyond that, yeah.
But I attend a lot of conferences. Most of them are Mormon history conferences, but a number of skeptic and atheist conferences, podcasting conferences. And you feel at the base level of attending the sessions and you see how the organizers are operating. You can tell how much work went into putting it together. You can tell how well oiled the machine is just by very small, almost subconscious tells. And I've never been to a conference that's run this well. I've been to conferences that have been doing an annual conference every year for the past 2.5 decades that are not run as smoothly as this. And to have such a wide breadth of subjects and such a wide appeal, and the biggest problem is choosing which of the amazing sessions you want to attend because there are so many that are at the same time. That is the best problem to have at a conference. And you guys just absolutely knocked it out of the park. It's an amazing conference, and I'm a little disheartened it won't be next year.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you very much.
Well, Bryce, it does pay a price. When you strolled into like an adult, you strolled toward your panel at about the right time. That meant it was preceded by 20 minutes of frantic panic of nobody knowing where you were and us calling out every 3 seconds on the radio.
Practicing the panel, actually.
Yeah,
practicing the
Bryce, one thing that happens at QED is we run to time. In the goodie bag this year, there was even a card game called Chronological. That's how much we run to time.
That's what you were making so much noise when we were introducing ourselves. You were opening a fortune cookie.
I was opening a fortune. We gave some fortune cookies out this year.
Which mine was, I tweeted about it.
Go on, what does it say?
The cosmos is indifferent to your existence.
Oh, that's a
quote.
quote.
I said it's getting from Carl Sagan, right? Yeah, and I was like, the fortune cookies here are a little bit too real.
Well, I've just opened another one, ruining the sound on your podcast recording, and it says, you like to think of yourself as a thoughtful person, but secretly, meh.
That's a fantastic way to wrap up
But the
entirety of QED. Absolutely.
Well, the things you've mentioned are precisely the way we aim to run the conference, and thank you for your kind comments. We appreciate it.
And I hope that when the 2020 tickets go on sale, that they few moments from when it's active, they aren't sold out immediately, so that I can get a couple tickets to come.
Well, the great news is that nobody has priority. Everybody has an even stab at getting the tickets. Right. We even changed the for sale time so that international attendees would have a fair crack of the whip. Because the first couple of years we set tickets on sale in the morning UK time, which was unfair to people who are coming from other time zones.
That's just one more fantastic piece of organization that you just don't think about, that you guys have thought about. So needless to say, thank you, Mike, Rick, and Andy. Thank you for hosting the panels, for working on the back end, for making it such an amazing, flawless conference. And I cannot wait to attend, hopefully in perpetuity.
Well, thanks to you, Bryce, for playing a part by appearing on the My Brother is a Mormon panel as well. We really appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye, America.
Of course, I want to thank everybody who did take a few minutes to speak with me. I really enjoyed speaking with all of them. So, for my thoughts on QED, it's the premier and possibly the largest atheism and skepticism conference in the world, and rightfully so. It was absolutely incredible. I got to meet members of the Skeptics Guide to the Universe and chat them up at a bar. I met people in person that I'd only ever known through online interactions, and I'd spent time with old friends. I mean, the problem with QED was I was constantly torn between 3 different presentations that I all wanted to see at the same time block, because there's just that much amazing content and content creators to hear from, and activists and communicators of all sorts. It's a problem, but it's a good problem to have at a conference. I met people who've walked incredibly difficult paths. I've met career activists who work tirelessly and thanklessly and won't have a retirement fund to show for it. I met with a guy with spiked ear piercings who presented on the ethics of bestiality, incest, and cannibalism, in previous QEDs. And he has loads of interesting other thoughts just constantly bouncing around his mind, which he's happy to share. The long and short of it is, QED is a place for people of all different interests and expertise to gather and hang out for a few days under the collective umbrella of skepticism. I did my usual bouncing around different groups for quick conversations and met so many people whose names I will never remember, but whose conversations I'll never forget. Everybody there was in the highest of moods, not just because the bar was made available from 8 in the morning until 2 the next morning for every day of the conference, but because we're all part of this incredible community and we share these collective ideals. To illustrate that point further, I want to share some thoughts on another conversation that I had there. This conversation was shared with one person who was incredibly generous, and she even bought a few drinks for me and for the people in the group. She'll go unnamed here, as I kind of got this sense that she didn't want to be broadcasted when she turned down an invitation to do a quick interview here. So she'll go by N for today. N was very inquisitive about spreading skepticism and how to engender those interests in others. Now, I'm absolutely no expert in skepticism. I don't even want to consider myself an expert in Mormon history yet. That'll come a few decades down the road. Nevertheless, Ann and I spoke for quite a bit of time about how to lead people to skepticism, and she asked how I've had success in the past in doing so. Of course, I told her that using the Socratic method employed in street epistemology, that seems to be one of the most effective ways to get people to see things from different perspectives. I also told her that it's important to keep in mind that skepticism isn't a label, but a pursuit. We should all strive to be as skeptical as possible concerning any given claim, but just branding oneself skeptic and calling BS on everything that somebody says, that's not skepticism, and that doesn't get us anywhere. What I found interesting was that N had a notebook almost completely full of her furiously scrawled notes. As we were talking and something would strike her, she'd flip to a page with a little bit of remaining white space and scratch her thoughts in shorthand. Now, this made me incredibly curious. What set of circumstances could have led N to attend QED and eagerly scratch notes on some of the basic fundamentals of skepticism? What was going on in her life to put her in this state? Her sentences were quick. Her thoughts seemed scrambled. and would ask the next question that she had in her mind before the previous answer was complete. It was clear she was trying to get as much information as she possibly could, and this was the last night of QED, so she was on borrowed time to get that silver bullet of skepticism. After a lengthy inquisition, N finally indulged me by answering some of my questions about how she found herself at QED. N has a fascinating story. A couple decades ago, N was invited to go to a Jesus camp of sorts. Like cabins in the woods, groups of scripture study, free meals, and most importantly, camaraderie, feeling like she's part of the Jesus community. N had a friend at these camps who is going to be known as A to us. A apparently has always been a bit of a social outcast for certain reasons, but A has always found community at these Jesus camps and when she goes to church. N eventually became skeptical of the religious claims that were being touted at this Jesus camp and at church, and she would spend her time away from the camp reading science and atheism books. She read the Bible from top to bottom, not just the passages that the camp directors told her to read. After a few years of constant pursuit of truth, N began asking too hard-of-hitting questions. Eventually, N made her way up to the head honchos of the Jesus camp to ask her questions about religion and God, but N was armed with Dawkins, Krauss, and Hitchens' books. She was disinvited. However, N's friend, A, never sought answers to those unanswerable questions like N was asking. A was pacified with the community and the vacuous answers of "we don't know, but we'll find out when we die, and when we meet our Savior face to face." That was good enough for A. You'd better be spiritually prepared, right? That's always the answer. We don't know, but make sure that your lamp is full. But what could A do? A could just let those hard-hitting questions invade her comfortable sense of community, but wouldn't that force her into being a social outcast? What community awaits A should she decide to not believe in God anymore and leave the religion? Needless to say, N and A are still to this day very close friends. N feels like A is the only person she can share her skeptical questions about the existence of God with, and A continues to dodge and deflect, but remain comfortable in her belief and her Christian community. Outside church, A doesn't have any friends. Luckily for N, who I was talking to this whole time, she's found the diverse community of skepticism inviting, which fills that community-sized hole that most of us have, being a social species. But just that alone didn't explain it. N simply wanting to get A out of religion didn't explain why she was so excited, and I don't know how to explain it, but why she had such a rabid desire for that silver bullet that will deconvert even the most devout religious fanatic. After a bit more digging, it quickly became clear why N wants A out of her church so much. Apparently, A's husband is a leader in the religious community, a good Christian man who can do no wrong. A's husband is also physically and emotionally abusive. N has seen A abused repeatedly. She's seen A go through the cycle of abuse over and over again, and when A goes to her pastor seeking help with the literal bruises showing on her body, that pastor tells A that she needs to stay in the abusive marriage, and her suffering here will be rewarded in heaven. You know, the old Mother Teresa canard of a lifetime of suffering earns an eternity of paradise. This pastor is using that logic, or illogic, to keep A in the religion and lock her in her abusive marriage. It became clear that N was near the end of her wits and rationality in trying to extricate A from that situation. N was at QED, it seemed anyway, for the sole purpose of learning how to get her friend out of religion and out of this abusive relationship. Now, through the conversation, once all of this information came out, the revelation of it was stunning, but it explained so much of why N was so frantically asking questions and scribbling a note on every important point we discussed. Together, N and I worked to the conclusion that the community is likely the only thing that is keeping A in her religion, and by extension, in her abusive marriage. Until N can show A that a community exists outside of church that is open and inviting, A remains in the religion as a survival mechanism. If she leaves the church, what happens to her? What happens to her kids, her marriage, all of her friends that she sees every Sunday and confides in? A leaves religion, then what? If I learn anything from Stephen Novella's talk, the human brain is programmed for efficiency, which means constantly weighing costs and benefits. For A, the cost of leaving religion is losing everything she knows, including her eternal salvation, and admitting that she's been wrong for decades and suffered abuse for no actual gain. What are the benefits of her leaving? Subconsciously, her mind probably can't even get to that point because the costs are too great and too unknown. And the question kind of hung out there, what has N offered A so far? Largely just doubt about A's religious conclusions. So until N can replace what A gets out of religion, the story will likely remain the same. A will continue to suffer for her religious and, pretended claimed salvation. She will continually be traumatized, and her mind will remain in a perpetual basic survival mode. I asked N if she thought that QED might be a good replacement for A's religious community. Maybe she could bring A along for the 2020 QED. N said something that I'm never going to forget. She said, maybe, if A survives that long. How many people are in similar situations, suffering every day for religious convictions? How many abuses are justified every single day because religion gets a free pass? For those people who rely on religion for their community, what does science and skepticism have to offer them other than doubt about their longest held beliefs? To me, that's why conferences like QED are so important. They can provide that community that we all need to some extent, that many of us leave behind when we leave religion. And Mormonism is one of the strongest community-based religions out there. If there's nothing to replace that, us skeptics aren't offering much to those who need a social safety net. But hey, this is an ongoing endeavor. Religions have had thousands of years to build up their communities. Science and skepticism have had a few hundred at most. We've still got a long road of community building to forge, and it has to start somewhere. QED, Sunstone, AACon, the John Whitmer Conference, ReasonCon, Nexus, or take your pick of any of the other dozens of skepticism conferences or Mormon conferences that happen every year, all the way down to the smallest meetup or Facebook groups in your hometown. If you're looking for community outside of religion, it's out there. The only thing is, you have to go find it. That community won't show up in the hands of two good-looking 19-year-olds at your doorstep. You have to proactively seek it out and contribute your skills if you're able. So, with all of that said, that's what makes QED so important to me. And for all of that, and for all of the people who attended, for everybody that I met and everybody I had conversations with, thank you to all of them. Thank you to everybody. And of course, thank you to the organizers for all of the work that they put in and for hosting their first ever Mormon exclusive panel that allowed me to present as a first-time attendee. That was my way of contributing my skills the only way that I know how. And if you listening to this right now can make it to QED or any conference, Mormon conference, skepticism, science, comics, furries, whatever interests you, there's a community out there looking for you. Maybe one day we're going to cross paths. So, I know this episode is a bit shorter than others, but we're going to get back to it here pretty quick. I'll be fresh off of the plane and a bit jet-lagged recording for next week's episodes, but I've got something in the works for a little bit of a Halloween special. Needless to say, I think Brian's going to have fun this time. So I hope you'll indulge me for a little bit of fun next week, and then we'll promptly return to our timeline, and the week after that, and then we'll continue on with the John C. Reckitt Bennett meltdown. So, of course, thank you to everybody, and we'll clean up all of the housekeeping, everything next week. Take care. This podcast is produced with the help of Julie Briscoe as production assistant and director of social media, and Brian Ziegenhagen as audio engineer. Music is produced by Jason Camo from aloststateofmind.com and is used with permission. Naked Mormonism is a production of Ground Gnome Studios, LLC, copyright 2018, all rights reserved.